Good day, conservation community. I'm Tebogo, the lead technical support engineer in the Year 3 team. Today, we're back again with another guided demo, this time looking at all things Ecoscope, specifically a new workflow that our team has released. Now, if you remember correctly, we always say that EarthRange is a user-centric tool, and by extension, couldn't Ecoscope by user-centric tools, right? We always aim to continuously improve the tools that we provide the conservation community with, so that they are always robust and viable for them to be able to be used in the context that all of our partners work in. And this is no different. This new workflow is basically an advancement in the events workflow that enables you to look further and drill deeper into numerical fields within your collected events on your EarthRange site. I'm here to guide you through it, show you how it works, and expose you to the different resources available to you so that you can reference them at your time of leisure, as and when you have time and when you're ready to get stuck in with this new workflow. All right, so let's log into our Ecoscope module, and please follow along the video if you do have an Ecoscope account. If you do not, on the Ecoscope login page, as you can see on my screen, just hit no account, sign up, and we'll set you up with an Ecoscope account just for you. All right, so I'm going to log in, and we'll get into the brass tacks of what we are here for today. Let's get into it. Boom, there she is, right on the left. Event details in numeric workflow. Now, this is why this guided demo exists, right? The event details numeric workflow. This is the new workflow that our Ecoscope team has released. And before we get into the configuration of the site, maybe let me just give you a broad introduction to what it is verbally before we get into the nitty-gritties of it. So this event details workflow, just to summarize it, if you think of the events workflow, right? With the events workflow, we get a general understanding of how many events exist, or how many events of a specific event type exist within a predefined time range, right? So it's just basically to say how many snare events do we have recorded or that have been reported within a certain amount of time, how many global forest watch events, how many geofence break events have been recorded, and so forth. Now, with the event details, the difference is that we can get into the analysis of the numeric fields in those events. So if you think of a wildlife sighting event, for instance, it has a field that relates to how many animals were sighted during a sighting, right? That is a numeric field that we can analyze using the event workflow details to get more information about, or gather more insights about group sizes, density, distribution, and so forth. So it's not just about how many how many event types have been recorded, but about the specifics of what was recorded pertaining to those specific event types or events that were recorded, wildlife sighting events that were recorded in our localities. Cool. So let's open this guy up and see what we're dealing with. So I'll click on event details, numeric field workflow. And the first thing that I would have to do once this loads is define the event type that we want to choose, or choose the event type that we want to use that we want to analyze for, right? So I'll go event type, and then I'll choose wildlife. So I want to analyze on the wildlife sighting. So I'll choose wildlife sighting. And then once I'm happy with that, then I will say next. And there we go. Now, this is a page that you would be familiar with based on the patrols, events, and subject workflow, right? It's the workflow configuration page where we define certain parameters related to the type of workflow that we want to run. So the workflow details, first and foremost, we'll give it a name. We'll say let's say this is wildlife sightings. Obviously, if this is an arbitrary name, you would give it a name that is relevant to the type of analysis that you are running on your side. And then you can give it a description as well. I always opt to give it a description because it makes it a little bit more better when other people as well are looking at the analysis that you have configured. So the workflow description here will just be sighting or analysis that says sighting data for the first sections. Like nothing too fancy, just a very simple description. Cool. So those are the workflow details. Give a name, give it a description, right? And then the next part is the data source. As you will see, because we have only one, well, we've only connected to a single data source in my specific Ecoscope environment, there's only one listed, and therefore it is grayed out because there's no other alternative data source for me to connect to. If you have multiple data sources, then they'll be listed here. You would be able to drop down and choose the relevant one, right? So you have your data source, that demo, right? And then you have the next part would be for you to select your time range, right? So within your time range, then you have your time zone, your sense, and until. So your sense is basically from when, your until is to when, right? So your time zone, you want to make sure that you choose the correct time zone in that whatever the analysis of data that you're conducting needs to be relevant to the time zone that you have selected so that your outputs are relevant to your context, right? So since is from when, so we have to define a date range. Then I'll have the until, which is the to. So this is basically the end time at which I want to run the analysis for. So it'll be from 2020 until 2026 today. The third month, the third day of the third month, and I'll leave the time as well as is. Once I'm happy with that, that is my from date, that is my to date. I'll leave everything else as is. And then the next part after that I configure my time range is my event types, right? So you'll see because we predefined the event type in the first step after we selected the data source, or once we clicked on the workflow, wildlife sighting already sits there. Now the next part says analysis field. Now you'll see by default, it already has chosen count as my default field, numeric field, as my default numeric field. If I had multiple fields within my event type, then what would happen is this field, or the options in this field will be listed accordingly within this field. But because there's only one field, even if I drop it down, you'll see it only limits me to that count field, right? So I'll leave it as a default. And just as a tip for you, throughout Ecoscope with Ranger and Windy, whenever you're configuring something, you'll always have these beautiful tooltips at the bottom of each and every field that tell you what it is that you're configuring as you're configuring it. So just consult the tooltips just for your own reference, right? Cool. Once you're done with your analysis field, then you have your label for analysis data. Here, I'm just going to put this down as sightings. And then units, what does the number represent? We can put that down as animal sightings, right? And then you also have the opportunity to include events that do not have a geometry. So if these are external data events that have been pushed into your Earth Ranger instance, then you can choose to include that into your analysis as well. Just keep in mind that for Earth Ranger events, for the most part, all of them will have a geometry, which would be either be a point or a polygon, right? Once we're happy with that, we'll leave that at that, and then we'll have to group our data. The instruction this says specify how the data should be grouped to create the views for your dashboard. This field is optional. If left blank, all the data will appear in a single view. And then we have what we refer to as our advanced configurations. Our advanced configurations within Ecoscope have already been preset to have defaults that suffice and should be you should be able to use as they are. But obviously, we afford you the opportunity to be able to configure these as custom configurations should you wish to do so. But the defaults are already there for you to be able to use as they are, right? So the first one there is the event location filter. If you expand that menu, you'll see it speaks about a bounding box. What this basically means is if you think of a cookie cutter, what you're doing is you're cookie cutting a specific area within your conservancy or your protected area to only run the analysis within that bound box. And then you have your base map layers. As I said, the defaults should suffice for you to be able to run your analysis. There's already preset base maps, your terrain, your satellite, but you do have the opportunity of adding additional ones. And if you want to add an additional one that relates to your analysis, what you could obviously do is just use the configuration that already exists for the terrain and the satellite as a guideline of how you could add the one that you want to add to your list of base maps. All right. And then the next part is the events bar chart. The bar chart shows you how many events of different types occurred over time. So we're basically borrowing this concept from the events workflow, right? So it's kind of, this is where the two marry each other. So although we are getting into the brass tacks of analyzing the numeric field, we would also like to know where the spatial, where the distribution rather of those events are with that were recorded within a protected area. So we'll leave that at here, and then you have your analysis field sum map. These settings generate a grid-based heat map showing where events are concentrated. Right. So this is just basically to say where's your events that you're running an analysis on, where most of them are concentrated, basically like a density map. So once you have completed your workflow form, right, the next part would be for you to submit it. Now, if I click on submit here, and I have a misconfigured parameter within my workflow form, then Ecoscope will validate that and tell me that I cannot submit this to your workflow and prepare it to be run because there are errors that have been set in your configuration form. And then I'll say submit, right? So as you can see, there is the workflow. We have the wildlife sighting. That's the name. The template that we use is the event details. The status is ready to be run. Last run date, we don't have a date there yet because we haven't run it. And the last run duration also is empty because we have not yet run the workflow. So then I will say run, and you will see now it says pending and then running. Now, something to consider here is the amount of data and the time range that you select will greatly impact the speed at which your workflow runs. Just keep that in mind. Cool. As you can see in this example, this only ran for a minute, right? So let's open it and see what results are available to us. Cool. Now, as you can see there on the top left, my view is event category, and this is the event category that this wildlife sighting event belongs to. And then below that, I have the context, which is basically a summary of the elements that we have set up in the configuration for the title, the description, the time range, right? The workflow name, and the time zone. And then I have my dashboard with my different widgets. So a total of all of the events, the wildlife sighting events that have been recorded or that are being analyzed in my analysis. There's 36 of them. And then this is the sum of the sightings. So remember now, there's 36 events, but looking at that specific field, the count field in that wildlife sighting event, there have been 293 species of animals cited, right? And then it gives me a minimum of 1. I have a maximum of 33. So there's one event that exists with 33 sightings of a species of animal. The median is 5.5 and the mean is 8.1. Right? So you get this statistical sightings a summary table. And then you have your proportional sightings, which is just basically a total of how many of those are with the label that we defined, which is animal sightings. And then I have my sightings location map, right? As you can see, this is a density map. If I hover over it, there are details related to it. Just there's the slash so that you can see what I'm looking at there. Gives me the event time, the serial number, who reported it. If there wasn't a value there, then it would move. Like if I move it to there, you can see it was reported by the Bush Ranger support team, and the count is 3. I can zoom into this map to look at specific events, right? And obviously, the bigger the circle, the more events are, or the more animals were sighted at that specific location. As you can see, that's 3, that's 12, and that's 7. And you also have the spatial distribution of where all of these events were collected. You have a few in East Africa, Central Africa, and a lot of them in that Zambia region, and a few of them in Southern Africa as well. Right, so that's an interactive map. And then you have your sightings over time. This is the bar graph that I was telling you about. Remember, we filtered the x-axis by year. So in 2020, if I hover over it, you'll see we have 3 sightings, 26 sightings, 9, 72, 163, and 20. So looking at these widgets, you'll be able to tell stories and kind of derive insights from these widgets based on the information displayed on each of them. Cool. And then you have your citing some as well. So this just basically shows you the summary of the distribution of the events as they were created per pixel, right? You can see in there, there's 5, there's 22 in there, and there's 2 in there. So this just basically shows you the summary of the distribution of the events per pixel on your map, right? And then finally, you have your events table. So if you think of your hamburger menu on your Earth Ranger side and you go to field event exports and you filter you export your filtered event types, this would basically be the same as that. The nice thing about it being on Ecoscope is that it is augmented by the other maps and widgets available to you on Ecoscope. It's not a standalone, right? So you'll have the serial number, the event time, who reported it, latitude and longitude, species that was observed, where they colored. So you have all of the specific fields that were recorded in that event type, and then you have the count field, and there you can look at them specifically like that. Right. So this is just basically the summary table of all of the event types that we are looking at and all of the different fields within that event type that we're looking at, which should be the wildlife sighting event type. And that is the widget that is available. These are the widgets that are available to us on this event details numeric field workflow dashboard. That basically brings us to the end of our guided demo. Of course, if you have any questions, please reach out to our support team. We're always happy to help, and we look forward to helping you. And if you ever get to a point where you need more information related to this new workflow, just click on help there on the top left, and you'll say help center. And within the help center, if you search for event details, the first article that comes up when you search for event details is creating and running event details numeric workflow. Clay, our instructional designer, has put all of this together to make it easier for us to be able to work through what each of these, basically what the workflow is about, what each of the widgets relate to, and how to run the widget itself or configure the workflow itself. It's a very detailed, comprehensive article that you can read in your leisurely time. And of course, if you have any questions, please reach out to our support team, and heads off to the Ecoscope team and Aklena for a job well done on releasing the event details workflow. From myself, really, really want to thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for the great work that you do. We are in awe, and we are glad and honored to be a small part of the work that you do in your workspaces. We appreciate it. Thank you. And I'll catch you on the next one. Have a great one. Cheers.